There's something special about bringing two people together, and especially when they live across the world from each other, and seeing couples come together, come into your office, seeing stories. Sometimes the narratives can be a bit cheesy, but I love a cheesy story.
How do you explain to someone what a partner visa is if they're hearing it for the first time?
Partner visas are essentially a visa that allows an Australian citizen partner to bring their non-Australian citizen partner to Australia to live with them for the purposes of being dependent partners. This can be via marriage or it can be de facto partners.
If a relationship is deemed not to be a genuine relationship, are there any legal consequences for somebody in that situation?
If they have a look at an application and they say, well, you've provided manufactured information or you've provided information that suggests that the application is bogus, enact what's called public interest criteria or PIC 4020, which is a significant rule around not providing false or misleading information to the department. That rule, if they do enact it, means that you're barred from reapplying for a visa for 3 years unless you can have it overturned. When you look at a partner visa, you not only have the application processing time, which can take up to 18 months. You also have the time between visa grant to the permanent stage partner visa, which can be another 2 years.
And if you could give any piece of advice to every couple that's looking to apply for a partnership visa in Australia, what would it be and why does it matter so much?
I think it's about being organized. It's about looking at each of those four.
So Krish, describe a moment to me early in your career where you felt that partner visas were more than just paperwork, that they actually changed lives.
Yeah, there's something special about bringing two people together, and especially when they live across the world from each other, and seeing couples come together, come into your office, seeing stories. Sometimes the narratives can be a bit cheesy, but I love a cheesy story. I love a rom-com. So I always say to partner visa applicants, make your cheesy story a bit of a narrative, almost like a rom-com.
So let's start from the beginning. How do you explain to someone what a partner visa is? If they're hearing it for the first time, what are some of the common misconceptions that are associated with partner visas? And how would you explain it to a first timer?
Yeah, so partner visas are essentially a visa that allows an Australian citizen partner to bring their non-Australian citizen partner to Australia to live with them for the purposes of being dependent partners. This can be via marriage or it can be de facto partners. De facto partners, there's a lot of misconceptions about what a de facto partner is. I would classify a de facto partner as not so much boyfriend and girlfriend. Perhaps you're seeing each other more than once or twice a week, but not so much as being married or engaged.
Okay. And it seems like there's a few kind of eligibility rules around this. And that seems a little bit wishy-washy. So can you help us kind of clarify what these eligibility rules might be?
When you look at partner visa, it's not only being in a relationship, it's about showing evidence of that relationship. Evidence can be things such as when you started living together. Evidence can be things as simple as you've traveled together, you've bought gifts for each other, or it could be something a little bit more complex, like you're beneficiaries of each other's wills, or you have a joint bank accounts together, you have major mortgages or commitments, legal commitments together, things like that.
So does that mean you don't have to necessarily be in a marriage? You could be in a de facto relationship, but how do you establish that, especially if you're living overseas from one another? Like, how do you show the department that you're in a genuine relationship when you can't really be spending day to day with each other? You might not have a shared bank account with somebody that lives overseas.
The way I position it is you need to have a routine which involves your partner. That routine needs to be daily. For some of my applicants, it could be waking up to breakfast together via video calls, going to work, at lunchtime, giving a call to each other, text messaging, checking in with each other, then afterwards having plans that involve your partner. The rules are technically concerned the way they describe it as being not separately and apart. So you can live separately, but you can't live apart. Living apart would mean if you had no contact with each other day to day, but perhaps on the weekends you would meet up together or you would call every third or fourth day and you would have a bit of a conversation, but it wouldn't necessarily be a routine that would involve your partner. When you think about a routine where you live together, your routine would definitely involve accommodations for each other. And you'd want to see the same, even if you live separately, where you'd accommodate for someone's work hours or their daily schedules the same way.
So it sounds like call logs, text messages, all those things are going to be a big part of the case that you're providing to the department.
Definitely contact that is daily and continuous evidence. Call logs that show that you're in contact each day is significant. I would also ask for significant points in your relationship that were captured via text. It may be a happy birthday message on your birthday, it may be Christmas messages, it may even be comments or questions around how the relationship is progressing and what the other partner thinks. Things like that are very important, especially when we're capturing that via text message is very important.
Okay. And can you disclose to us any unusual pieces of evidence that you've used in order to support a relationship?
Unusual pieces of evidence could be one couple that I assisted had an app that would split payments. They would, on a weekly or a daily basis, put in all the expenses together and it would split the amount in half and they would pay it literally in halves, which was very, very odd for me because a lot of relationships tend to be back and forth. One partner might be earning more, so he might really send money to the other partner. On the other hand, the other partner might buy a lot more gifts or might ask for funding for particular purposes like travel tickets and so on. I've had evidence of relationships and commitments to the other partner in the form of a puppy and evidence of the puppy's well being. I've had other strange forms of evidence include marriage gifts that included iPhones to one another to stay in touch while each other was overseas. It's really quite interesting to see how unique certain relationships can be, and they're still genuine and subsisting relationships.
Yeah, it gives you a unique insight into how people have their relationships. I imagine it might be interesting to hear certain people's stories where they might say, yeah, we communicate every day, which might sound kind of normal, but maybe some relationships, they don't have that, where they're not communicating constantly, or there's other things at play. And so you have to kind of extract information from other areas and say, well, how are you guys in a relationship then? Particularly when they're not living together. So it's a real detective fact finding mission, isn't it?
It is, and it's really about identifying what works for the relationship that you have before you. Not every relationship is the same. It has different pressures, it has different requirements in it, and the people are always moving along in that relationship quite rapidly. And being able to identify with the way that the relationship works and what's best and how to best present that to the department is really what makes you a good practitioner.
As a practitioner, you've got to put those applications through. So, can you walk me through the stages of the application process and if there are any particular parts that might test people's nerves, particularly if they might have been refused on the first instance?
Yeah, so the partner visa is split between an offshore or an onshore application. What people don't realize is the partner visa is two different parts submitted at the same time. When you look at whether it's an offshore or onshore application, the first part is the temporary partner visa, which is an application which is a temporary. It's valid for 2 years. Treat that as a 2 year cooling off period to confirm that the relationship is still continuing before it transitions onto a permanent partner visa. When you submit the application and you pay the hefty fee, you submit both applications at the same time. But after 2 years of lodging the partner visa, the department will come and invite you to apply for the permanent stage visa. Some of the peculiar applications tend to be the ones that are submitted in a very short notice, where the state or the territory in New South Wales allows registration of the relationship, the de facto relationship. You are allowed to submit a partner visa with as little as 6 months of evidence, which is quite significant in that it means that people with little evidence of their relationship can submit a partner visa validly to the department. However, you still need to show to the department that that relationship is continuing and that it's genuine. The department is quite savvy about processes. They know about different ethnicities and the ceremonies and systems involved. So they are very, very acutely aware of if the application looks somewhat suspicious, then you may have a situation where you need to provide additional information to satisfy them that it's a genuine application.
The department is culturally aware of different kinds of situations and will, I guess, treat different cultures and races in a different way because they've got their own ceremonies. Can you give us an example of what this would look like?
Yeah, so recently we've had an application where their Australian citizen partner and his Indian girlfriend or wife now is they had their ceremony quite quickly. And the department has asked us for additional evidence around traditional ceremonies involved with an Indian wedding. This includes the ceremonies where they walk around a fire, the ceremonies where they are. That was quite advanced. It was quite interesting to see that request because it showed that the department has people who are aware of the ceremony, who are aware of the different cultural requirements for marriage across the world. And it shows that they're being very strict when they look at applications.
So it's not enough to just have a marriage certificate and a photo of yourselves wearing rings. They would want culturally appropriate evidence to show that in your culture you would be considered married as well. So things like those ceremonies if you're coming from an Indian background or whatever it is.
Exactly, yes. You'd expect photos, you'd expect the different attire, the families, things like that. And sometimes you do have situations where visa applicant or their partner may be in Australia because they're getting away from their family. So it's about explaining that estrangement and all of those peculiar elements that make up, I guess, the marriage relationship.
So is there a particular piece of evidence that is just like the golden arrow of evidence for partnership visas that if you feel like you've got this, then it will certainly deliver the visa result? Is there anything like that that exists?
I would say there's no real the golden piece of evidence that I would develop is always the relationship statement needs to be from the partner visa applicant, and it also needs to be from the Australian citizen sponsor. Many times, the way that you structure the relationship statement should explain your relationship, should explain the history of it, should explain where the relationship's moving towards, and it should cover the 4 pillars of expected of a relationship, which includes financial aspects, the social aspects, the level of commitment you show to one another, nature of the household, which is an explanation of how the household works. In many times, in many ways, that can be difficult when you're living apart from one another, when you're in different countries. So the way that I elaborate on that part is how does your separate households work to merge one another together? And that may be how you accommodate for each other's schedule.
Okay. I imagine sometimes these visas get refused and people might come to you after there's been a refusal, or there might be a situation where you've done an application and it's been refused. So tell me how that is, I guess, received. I imagine it would be absolutely heartbreaking for people to hear that, they can't be with their loved ones. But what can you do there? And are there any options that people have?
Yeah, so when there are refusals, the important point is to request, is identify 28-day period after the refusal, because that's the period in which you're allowed to appeal the refusal. When that person is onshore, it means that that person will continue to have that visa that they currently have, such as a bridging visa, while they wait for that appeal to be decided. That can be very important because the bridging visa associated with a partner visa is quite beneficial. It allows you to work for any um, company with unrestricted work rights for the duration of the processing time. When you appeal the application, it means that the department's assessment is put on hold. There is a refusal of that application. However, the tribunal, the Administrative Review Tribunal, will re-review that decision on its merits and decide whether the Department of Immigration or Home Affairs made the correct decision. A lot of the times that will involve a reassessment of all of the elements at the time that the review tribunal looks at your application. So that could mean that if your application was submitted with only 6 months of evidence, you could have enough time to submit another 1.5 years or maybe 2 years of evidence before the review tribunal looks at it, which can sometimes rectify any issues involved with the evidence provided as well. I guess, when you meet those requirements, it's very hard not to show that you meet those requirements. And I feel like my system that I use and the way that I look at the applications shows that they are genuine partner visa applicants. I think that when people do have their applications refused, like any application, you'd expect that the person would have a fair idea that the visa might get refused and that the practitioner would tell them that, look, there's going to be potentially an issue around this aspect. You might have a adverse decision that we need to prepare for.
And if a relationship is deemed not to be a genuine relationship, are there any legal consequences for somebody in that situation?
Yeah, so when the department ascertains or if they have a look at an application and they say, well, you've provided manufactured information or you've provided information that suggests that the application is bogus, then they to enact what's called public interest criteria or PIC 4020, which is a significant rule around not providing false or misleading information to the department. That rule, if they do enact it, means that you're barred from reapplying for a visa for 3 years unless you can have it overturned or you can explain a reason why the interests of an Australian citizen warrants that they don't look at that requirement. I think that one of the top areas that a lot of people don't consider is the photos. You do need to provide photos of your relationship, and it almost is meant to meet the requirement of showing that your relationship is socialized, whether it's within your family, whether it's within your friends circle, And the best way to do that is to slap the photos onto a PowerPoint and annotate who's in the photo, where the photo was taken, the date the photo was taken, and any reasons why the photo was taken. For example, was it a birthday or was it travel in a particular area or something like that? All of that adds context to the relationship and shows that there's people who know that relationship. There's people who've been around the partner and the sponsor, and they kind of want to be a part of that relationship.
Any particular cases that you can recall where you felt like the client that you were helping really wanted things to kind of be successful that stood out for you? Any memorable moments?
There's many memorable moments of those partners, especially those onshore partners, where they come into your office, you see them at the start. Sometimes they could be fearful, sometimes they could be staring down a long period of time, and you see them grow during the time involved with the partner visa. When you look at a partner visa, you not only have the application processing time, which can take up to 18 months. You also have the time between the visa grant to the permanent stage partner visa, which can be another 2 years. So there's a lot of time involved. There's a lot of different relationship decisions involved. There's ways that the relationships oftentimes they develop and they grow stronger. And you find that although it seems like a long time, oftentimes I look back at some of this when I started helping people with a partner visa versus when I see them progress to a permanent stage application, and feels like it was just yesterday that I helped them with an application.
Yeah, it must be very rewarding work to see the outcome of that.
Reuniting families, it's always rewarding to reunite their partners with their overseas partners and to see the families grow, to see the kids or the puppies or the photos of their houses. And yeah, it's definitely one of the joyful moments when you look at the immigration program.
Okay, cool. And if you could give any piece of advice to every couple that's looking to apply for a partnership visa in Australia, what would it be and why does it matter so much?
I think it's about being organized. It's about looking at each of those four pillars and making sure you have three or four pieces of evidence around those pillars. Don't necessarily get stuck around or bogged down by technicalities. A lot of the times people feel like they need to have joint bank accounts, not realizing that your separate bank account statements with evidence of funds related to the relationship, such as grocery bills or travel ticket, all of that's important. Similarly, cohabitation is often looked at as necessary for an application. However, these days we often find partners who are pre-marriage and they may not necessarily live together, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Showing a routine where the partners get together every day or every second day or meet each other at home or out on a daily or weekly basis. That's all important. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Krish, and wish you all the best with all your future visa applicants and may you keep winning those cases.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.